Welcome to From the Logo, the Scores NBA show. I'm your host, Joseph Casciaro. Joining me, as he does bi-weekly, is Scott Campsall. And joining us for the second time, John Bennett. For those who didn't see the first episode John was on, I gave the big intro then. John spent years with the Toronto Raptors, assistant coach, coordinator of player development. He was Dwight Howard's head coach in Taiwan. The man has knowledge, the man has stories, and the man is on From the Logo for a second time. We're happy to have you, John. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I don't know how thankful you'll be later in this show in segment 3. We'll get to that. But for now, let's dive right into what other than the NBA Cup, all due respect to the Emirates NBA Cup.
We respect the Cup here on this show.
What I do believe has probably been the biggest story around the NBA, both, in and around the NBA, probably from a front office perspective, but also from a media and kind of like what's trending perspective, is the fact that Anthony Davis is reportedly going to hit the trade market less than a year after he was the centerpiece of the Luka Doncic trade. Nico Harrison now out of the way, so Anthony Davis back on the trade block. Not really that surprising when you consider that the fact that the Mavs, control their pick this year and then not again for the rest of the decade. Probably looking to maybe get a little younger to maximize their draft equity this year before they don't have it for a while, build around Cooper Flag. And so Anthony Davis, with a year and a half and a player option left on his contract, hitting the trade market. According to Shams, the Hawks, the Raptors, and the Pistons will be among the suitors. John, I want to start with you from a coaching perspective. We all know the kind of jokes when it comes to Anthony Davis, Anthony day-to-day Davis. Like, we've heard that he's not a durable guy. For my money, he's never been the best player on a contending team, but he's obviously still a talented player, a guy who can sleepwalk to 20 and 10. Even this year, we're seeing where he's been in and out of the lineup, basically averaging about 20, 10, and a couple blocks. So from your perspective, if a team out there is going to trade for Anthony Davis, what are they getting when he is actually healthy and on the court?
I think first and foremost, you're potentially a top 5 defensive team.
Just by plugging him in.
Yeah, he gives you the ability, and we're not talking, the same impact of like a Wemby.
Of course.
But I think prior to Wemby coming into the league, that's the sort of change you're looking at. Gives you so much versatility defensively. If you want to, in pick and rolls, play a traditional drop still for your less mobile guys, great. He can do that. If you want to be up to the level and show or hedge, great. He can do that. If you want to blitz, he can do that. And then if you want to switch 1 through 5, which is probably the most appealing option to so many coaches, he could do that too. So it just gives you a lot more options with him at the 5 or 4 potentially.
Yeah, albeit for me to disagree with the coach over here, but it's tough to say, right? Like especially at this point in the year, because I feel like we have talked so much now about like him being out and all the negative aspects of him that it's like I think his value is almost getting like skewed. I would say, because like John just said, when he plays, he's unbelievable. He's a ceiling riser. If you were to plug him into any of the teams that you mentioned, I think immediately he makes a massive difference for them. It's just the fact of like, how many games are you getting? What can you count on? What are we looking at this time of the year? And or for these specific teams, like a Detroit or a Toronto, it's kind of like, are you making this trade to win a championship? Like, what are you looking at here? Because you are absorbing an awful lot of salary,
Yeah, we can. I know we've got the stat board of his numbers this year. We included on that board the fact that, so for his career, he averages 61 games per 82. So essentially, an average year for Anthony Davis in his career is missing about a quarter of the year. But over the last 2 seasons, he's missed 43% of games. I mean, that's obviously concerning. Plus, there's the fact that, I mentioned that contract. So it's like $54 million this year, $58.5 next year, and then the $62.8 million player option the year after that. He's extension eligible next year. Obviously, I mean, he's eligible for like a 4-year, $275. No one's giving him that at this stage of his career. I think for me, where I would draw the line is, one, what it would cost to actually get him from like, an asset perspective. And then whether a team then feels compelled to overpay him later to like justify the trade. Like, if you're overpaying to get him or overpaying him later and paying a non-durable big man into his late 30s, I think that could be a problem in the modern NBA, in the apron era, where, like, as we've seen, teams are starting to realize that with how punitive the aprons are and luxury tax and all that, if you don't think a guy is like a true championship level, like superstar, almost borderline MVP caliber player, giving them like 30 to 35% of the cap is no longer the no-brainer it was just because, oh, well, he's a quote-unquote superstar, he's an all-NBA player. Like, you have to be much more careful about how you allocate your resources and you know, cap space in this day and age. And so that's where I would be a little hesitant, where I'm like, okay, it's like, I completely understand his value on the court when he's out there. And I do think if you're a team that is legitimately like an AD away from maybe getting to the finals, even if you're not winning a championship, if you can get to the finals or have a legitimate chance to get to the finals, look, you could be an injury away. You could be a couple bounces away. Like, who thought the Pacers had a chance last year, right? Like, I can talk myself into adding him in the short term. It's just I would be really hesitant if the cost is too high or the long-term cost is too high for a guy that, again, I just don't think is going to really be a 30 to 35% of the cap value guy on the court.
What's most interesting to me about this situation is that it is just which teams will be willing to do this and how it makes sense. Like the Raptors, for example, I think are a team that makes sense just because of what you said. They already have all this money tied up in, you know, Yak, IQ, RJ. So in theory, you know, they're not a team that's like, oh, we're bringing AD and all of a sudden our cap sheet is all messed up. It's like, we've already messed that up. Yeah. So, you know, a trade like that would take, you know, two of those guys and you're kind of just switching two for one.
If you could make the argument where it's like, hey, if you're allocating that money, better to allocate that same money to an Anthony Davis rather than a couple of those.
Absolutely. Like they're a team that is just, in my opinion, going to be shuffling these salaries until they find something that matches. Like I think obviously it's pretty untenable to pay 4 or 5 guys that amount of money when you have that ceiling. So it's going to be situational, you know, like a Detroit that has, you know, are they going to give up Ron Holland and Ivy in a trade like that? Like, are you going to give up young assets?
The Detroit one's interesting. And again, John, maybe you can come in here from a coaching perspective. Yeah. Like they've got Jalen Duren, who's like a most improved player candidate who looks like their long-term center. Imagine you're on the Pistons staff and they come to you and say, hey, we're going to trade for Anthony Davis. And now we got to figure out how to like make a Davis, Jalen Duren front court work. Are you just thrilled and be like, oh, great, more talent? Or are you like, I don't know about this?
I think anytime, you know, you can add talent to your roster, you're excited. They have a very traditional style offense. So he could exploit like their pick and roll coverages when they put 2 on the ball with Cade, which Duren has done a phenomenal job doing this year, especially when they have given him one-on-one opportunities off of that short roll and he's forced to either create for himself or draw a second guy off of that, even on 3-on-2s. And at the same point, it's like, well, if he's done a phenomenal job, why move on from that?
Right.
In the Hawks, you know, you see a situation where they kind of already have a guy who is doing those things and has those same injury concerns in Kristaps. I do see similar, you know, upside with the Raptors in terms of like consolidating. Maybe you are higher on 1 or 2 of the wings and you're willing to let 1 or 2 of them go to consolidate and get a piece that you really don't have that versatility right now, and especially in the backup 5 role they're really playing for. So gives them a lot more options, I think. Whereas the other situations, they kind of already have, not Anthony Davis, but they have guys holding those roles that are playing pretty well.
Yeah. I know, like, I can't remember who threw it out there, but like a Pistons example, it's like if they could get it done for Jaden Ivey, Tobias Harris, like so salary filler with Jaden Ivey and like 1 pick. You know, I think like that's, I'm not saying that's cheap, but I think that's the kind of deal where it's like, listen, if you can give away like a decent young player, but not like a blue chip type prospect, some salary filler and like 1 first rounder, I'm like, yeah, I'm realistic. It's Anthony Davis. You don't thumb your nose at that. It's for me when you start getting into like the blue chip prospects, the multiple first rounders for a guy that might play 50 to 75% of games. And then again, then you get to figure out the long-term picture. That's where it gets concerning for me. Does the center or power forward thing matter? I know that's always been a story with AD where it's like he prefers to play power forward because of the wear and tear. Coaches prefer him at center. Like in this modern kind of positional world, do you think it really matters?
I do think it matters.
Okay. How come?
I think like when you look at a team like like the Raptors, you have the option to play him. I would personally, and I think I'm going to say 90% of coaches would rather have 80+% of his minutes at the 5.
Right.
That's always been the thing. He wants to play 4. They want him to play the 5. But, you know, if you do want to play him at the 4, you know, you look at a team like the Raptors, if they do keep Jakob, they can play those two guys together and really play some kind of like smash mouth basketball, which we've seen test case this year, albeit two very different players, but traditional two bigs in Houston have a successful offense.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's opportunities for that to work. But I would prefer him to play the majority of his minutes at the 5.
Yeah, and I mean, even like thinking about that Raptors front court, I do wonder if it would work when the like 3, I guess in that case, Scotty is also a non-shooter. I mean, listen, shooting it better this year, but like isn't like a volume shooter. You know how I feel like there'd be issues there.
Yeah, and I do think too, salary wise, like just logistically, I think Yak is like probably going to have to be in that trade just to match the salaries because AD makes so much money unless you're going with like an RJ and an IQ. But it is, I mean, that's the same thing. Just like, I think a team that trades for AD, it's not going to be like a perfect 1-for-1 fit because I do think like if you're a team like Houston or, you know, San Antonio or the Thunder, it's like you're not using your extra pieces to make that trade. Like it's going to be a team that is like more or less capped out, more or less like just trying to make a fit. Like the, you know, I just keep going back to the Raptors because they're such an interesting team in terms of like having all these pieces that they're kind of trying to figure out how they fit together. So I think it's going to be a team that's kind of like, we're going to roll the dice and see how this works. You know, like a Chicago stands out to me as well.
And that's also where AD's from, right? He's a Chicago guy.
Yeah.
The Bulls making, and this isn't necessarily a knock on AD as much as it is just a knock on the Bulls, but like the Bulls being the team to make that move while being in the 9 to 11 range and then maybe elevating to like 5 or 6 would be the most Bulls thing ever for the way this front office has operated in the last few years. Okay, one of the teams actually playing for something much bigger and not just a play-in spot, the New York Knicks, who are absolutely rolling. I mean, we're all here in Toronto. We saw them come in here and kick the shorthanded Raptors' butts in the Cup quarterfinals to get to Vegas to get to the semis. So they had that really up and down start. They were 2-3. I know it's an extremely small sample, but 2-3, and in New York, the sky was falling. Since then, I believe they've won 15 of 19. They've won 8 of 9 since Josh Hart entered the starting lineup. They're up to second in the East now. They've got a top 4 overall point differential. John, what's going right for them right now? How much of this do you think is Mike Brown at all putting his stamp on things from an offensive perspective? What are they doing right, and what does Josh Hart unlock for them in that starting lineup?
I think it's a combination of both the familiarity of the roster and running it back with quite a few guys, and the injection of, you know, some more versatility, some more multiple action offensive sets, a little bit more spontaneity. And then when it comes to Hart, like, this is going to come as a shock to you guys, but as a coach, I like players who can pass, dribble, and shoot, and regardless of height. And if you can, you know, the biggest equalizer with going a little smaller is physicality. So defensively, you are worried about rim protection, but you can negate some of that with physicality. And if you have some extra length at other positions, which they certainly do at the wings. So even though he's kind of their 4, their 2 and 3 are super long and physical. And then offensively, it can be a little bit more dynamic because, you know, you get a guy who teams have given him a bit of the Tony Allen treatment, especially in the playoffs, playing bigs on him. You know, they're taking a risk.
Yeah,
they're
basically
gambling.
ignoring him, daring him to shoot.
And then also, like, when he gets involved in actions, because there are cross matches, there can be a little bit more confusion in terms of, are we switching? Are we not switching? Are we staying? Is he keeping on these handoffs? Whereas, you know, you get a guy like Mitchell Robinson, he's going to hand it off and he's going to roll hard. Like, it's not going to be a question. Whereas Josh Hart might actually pop to the corner on a, like, empty side dribble handoff, right? So versatility and familiarity, I think, is the name of the game for why they've had success.
He's also shooting almost 40% on 4 3-point attempts per game. We were in the Knicks locker room after that game, and Josh Hart spoke about how, so the Knicks brought in, I believe his name is Peter Patton, as their shooting coach this year. He's worked for some other teams as well. And Josh Hart talked about the fact that he's always had a shooting coach, but for example, before, his shooting coach lived in LA, and Josh is playing wherever he's playing, so say New York, and he's playing 30 minutes a game, and he's tired, and then after the game, he's consulting with the shooting coach, and essentially he's like, it's tough to stay on the mechanics when a guy's that far away, and I'm playing a lot in this. And he's like, now I have a shooting coach here in New York that I work with every day, and I work on my mechanics every day. And there's like just this repetition building. I'm not saying he's going to be a 40% three-point shooter full time, but if he's a respectable three-point shooter and teams can't give him the Tony Allen treatment, that can only help the Knicks. Based on what you've seen when they were here and just the last few weeks, all due respect to the Pistons, I know they're in first place and take nothing away from them, but is this the team to beat in the East? Like, are the Knicks who we thought they were coming into the year now?
Yeah. I think the Knicks thing's interesting because I think, you got to give every team 20 games. Like they have a brand new coach who, there was an Athletic article last week just about how Mike Brown has been very he's very egalitarian. Like he consults with the players. He lets them have input. He lets the coaches have input. He keeps the executives, he tells the executives exactly what his rotations are. It is a complete overhaul from what, Tom Thibodeau was giving them last year. So it's going to take time. And I think this is the Knicks team we thought they were going to be. They've gone back to the Josh Hart lineup, which was really successful for them last year before they got to the playoffs. I just think, I always thought the Knicks were going to be there. It was like, let's just give them time to kind of figure this out. Also last year, they brought Cat in right before the season started. So this is really their first crack at having all these guys run through. And what I thought, just to go back to what, the game the other day, Mike Brown called Josh Hart, he compared him to Andre Iguodala, which I thought was really interesting, just in the sense that he's kind of like that guy that plays bigger than he is, kind of connects all the lineups, or all the other guys together, can do everything on the floor, does everything well, but does a couple things elite. And I just think, to answer your questions 100%, I think the Knicks are the best team in the East. And I think as we kind of roll along in the season, that's going to play itself out,
Yeah, no, and Josh Hart does seem like the ultimate connector to that point. One thing I like about Mike Brown, first of all, I think Mike Brown's just like a really good coach, and he's one of these coaches that doesn't get his due and is like maybe casual fan respect, because they'll look at him and be like, wow, he never won when he had LeBron in Cleveland, or he didn't win here, or whatever. He didn't win a championship, and then look what happened to the Lakers. It's like, okay, the dude, though, has won in general pretty much everywhere he's gone, and he's been really good at, figuring out his personnel and adapting to that. You look at what he did in Sacramento and what he did to their offense with the dribble handoff stuff and with Sabonis as a hub. And it's like, okay, he doesn't have a Sabonis-size hub in New York. Cat's a very skilled player, but he's not like an offensive hub. But you just see how he's diversified their offense compared to, maybe it was a little more predictable under Thibodeau. They're moving more off the ball. They're leading the league in terms of the percentage of their shots that come from the corners. Their three-point frequency is up. Mid-ranges are down. The offense overall, I think, has only jumped from 5th to 3rd. It was it was already elite, and now it's a little better. But I do think what we're seeing, and John, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems more sustainable and playoff-proof than it did last year.
I think, exactly what the floor is with the previous offense. It's very simplified, right? And you're worried about with these changes committing more turnovers, more passes, more turnovers is general rule, right? But I think when you get everybody involved in touching the ball at one end of the floor, that is super infectious. So we used to talk about it all the time with the Raptors when we made some changes to do a little bit more 5-out stuff. It's just by passing the ball around the perimeter to a guy like Jonas Valanciunas, how much more engaged is he going to be at the other end of the floor when he touched the ball versus a more traditional offense, say a Pistons offense, where they're running more chin action? It's Jalen Duren might not touch the ball if he doesn't catch it on a pick and roll for 5-6 possessions in a row. And even if he's not in an opportunity to score, you get a guy like Cat, if he's the swing guy, it's well, they've got to guard that. Like,
Yeah.
this is the best shooting big man of all time, right?
Self-proclaimed.
Yeah. So I mean, I think you get, even though you risk the concept of like committing more turnovers, you get a greater connectivity. You know, guys just nobody wants to run up and down the court over and over again, defend, rebound, never touch the ball.
Yeah. I do like too that. Well, one thing I liked about Mike Brown, I told Scott this, but he's one of the old school coaches that comes in and before taking any questions post game, he sits down and gives you a 2-minute spiel of like, here's what I saw tonight, here's what happened, like, and then I showed Scott at one point like the timestamp on my phone. It was like 3 minutes and 18 seconds, and he hadn't taken any questions yet. He was just like waxing poetic about the game. It was great. Also, what I like about Mike Brown, though, he talked about it post game after that win over the Raptors, is he's very adaptable and very okay with just being like, you know what, it might not be a night for my game plan. Whereas, like, you know, I don't know if Tom Thibodeau was ever going to be that guy, but Mike Brown essentially spoke about how, hey, you know, I brought in this new offense. Here's why I think it'll work. But the Raptors' pressure was really causing us issues. There were some turnovers, and it just felt like one of those nights where I said to the guys, forget everything we said we were going to do offensively. Beat the pressure, drive. If someone's open, kick it. And it seems so simple, but I feel like, you know, if you're a team, if you're a Jalen Brunson, if you're a star player or just a player on that team, you appreciate a coach who can go from drilling things to be like, you know what, let's just simplify things tonight. Here's how we're going to win this game.
And that's where you get like an added boost by having this like reinvigorated, different offense, because you can always pull back the movement and pull back the number of touches and go to a straight angle pick and roll, mid pick and roll with Brunson. That's not going to be hard for him to adjust to dribbling the ball up and getting to like the 45 and getting a pick and roll. It's an easy change.
Yeah, and even just like, I mean, that's like, I think a refreshing system for anybody, but to go like, especially the shift from like, it's like, it seems night and day to go from from Tibbs to, Mike Brown. And it helps that their team is just like good. Like Karl Anthony Towns is amazing. Also, like, you know, we can talk all about lineup changes and everything. It's like, I think he's 10 of 20 from downtown during this stretch. It's like part of it is just like the guys are playing better. Like Towns is playing better. OG's back in the lineup. But I think
Mikal Bridges looks rejuvenated.
Bridges, you know, and that's the thing. It's like you put Josh Hart in that lineup, and it's like, yes, you don't have a traditional rim protector, but you have 3 guys with arms for days that are just like, are so smart defensively. They know where to be. They know how to cover up for the other guys. And I think like that obviously is the vision. That was the vision last year with this lineup, but it just seems like they're playing more to that potential at this particular moment in time.
Great point. Also helps to have Jalen Brunson. Like what
I
ran out of words for this guy a long time ago. I've always spoken about how I've always marveled at the fact that, like, you know, the prototypical like undersized guard who's maybe a defensive liability, and you always think of those guys as liabilities in the playoffs, right? Even if they're stars throughout the season. Jalen Brunson has bucked that trend and has always still been like a positive contributor in big games in the playoffs because he's just tough as nails, and like it doesn't make sense that a guy his size can continue to get the shot he wants or finish even when it's a tough shot in like playoff settings when the game is mucked up, but he does it. And it's like that guy gets you a makeable shot almost every time down the floor, even when maybe opposing defenses or postseason defenses will bog Mike Brown's system down. And it's just remarkable. And I know, like, I saw someone had tweeted that even some of the underlying numbers with respect to, like, the shot quality that Jalen Brunson's getting this year, his touches, like, all these things they're trending in a way where it's like, even though he's still putting up big numbers, 28 and 6 on like 60% shooting, the toll that his shot profile is taking on him is probably less than it was under the Tibbs offense.
Yeah. Not to account for just all the minutes and everything.
Right. So, and I feel like that can only help in the long term.
Yeah,
you know, for a team that has finals ambitions.
Yeah, like I think Michael Bridges is playing like, he was very famously like critical of the Tibbs system last year. I think he's playing like 4 or 5 minutes less, which like doesn't sound like a lot, but it adds up. Over the course of a season, it's like almost 200 minutes or something like that. So I mean, like that, even something as simple as just like having a normal rotation is going to make a huge difference for these guys.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about like being undersized, if you're willing to sacrifice your body, you go from 6'5" to 6'7" in a lot of ways. Like, yeah, you're not able to challenge passing lanes as well as a 6'7" guy with greater wingspan. But if you're not a shot blocker at the rim, then you're a charge taker. So it doesn't really matter if you're 6'7" or 6'5". If you're willing to sacrifice your body, it accounts for a little bit more height than your measured height.
Yeah, I mean, you know all that very well from coaching Kyle Lowry, I assume. Like, that guy played bigger than his, body in big games. And, Jalen Brunson does the same thing while being like a 25 to 30 point a game efficient scorer. It's nuts. All right. The positive banter is probably over from John's perspective because we're about to really piss him off. And we did not mean for this to happen, John. But, when Scott's in every other week, he has a segment called This League, since he is the director of social content here at The Score. And the NBA is uniquely positioned to give us trending, very social-friendly topics just because of the nature of the game, the soap opera that is This League. So, Scott, this week on This League, while we have a longtime staff member of the Raptors who was on the staff during the LeBronto'd years, what are we talking about on This League?
Yeah, this is just a real happy accident, I swear to God. So this week, a lot of social stuff this week, but I think the biggest thing, on the latest episode of the Mind the Game podcast, Steve Nash and LeBron did a mailbag episode where they were asked essentially what they thought their peak season was. LeBron, he picked the 2017-2018 season for himself, which I think we'll leave the Raptors stuff till after, and we'll say I think most famously people will remember he had maybe the best game of his career, game one of the finals, where
that might have been the best basketball game any human has ever played.
51-8-8, which of course they did not win because J.R. Smith forgot the score at the end of that game.
Only one matter than John Bennett that we're bringing this up is J.R. Smith.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to throw it to you guys because it's interesting for a number of reasons. I think number one, just that this dude has picked a season that was like 8 years ago, and he's still playing at like a pretty amazing level. And also, you could make the argument that he has had a peak from like 2007 until maybe a couple of years ago. So I want to throw it to you guys. What do you guys think is LeBron's peak season? Maybe why don't we start with John?
I was going to say, I think John should get us started here. And, if it's not 2017-18, then can you at least share with us what it must have been like on the bench for LeBronto?
This is unbelievable, really. I mean, I haven't seen you in about 5 years in person at least. And this is the segment I wasn't on for a number of weeks. You could have done this any other week. Next segment is going to be about the death of your dog when you were a child. Unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, that series, 2017-2018, that was, I believe, the bench mob year.
Yeah, it was the year that the LeBronto, Mark Jones said LeBronto on the air when he was hitting all those step backs.
The buzzer beater over OG, if you don't remember.
Yeah,
the turnarounds in game two.
That series to me was like, I can't speak personally for the guys in the locker room, but the confidence of the guys to pull that off, and we got swept. Now, 2 of those games were decided by a combined 3 points. Yeah. But to me, that series was like, okay, how do you want it? You say it all the time with a guy like that's that great. You can't stop him. You can only hope to slow him down and make it difficult for him, give him different looks. And he just has an answer for everything. His shooting splits were phenomenal that year.
Played all 82 games.
Yeah, plays all 82 games. And you look at the roster too, it's that was the Isaiah Thomas, Dwayne Wade Cavs year. That was not a roster where you were blown away. The previous year, they were you're going in to play them and the entire starting lineup shooting 38+% from three. You're all right, well, do we just guard the 3-point line and then it becomes a parade to the rim? That year was not the same. It was a roster. Just getting them to the finals was a significant achievement. I would say close to, if not higher than, in terms of achievement, with the roster that he had, his first Cavs run
when he beat the Pistons.
But I think he was a better player, obviously, in 17-18 than in the early Cavs days.
Yeah.
I think 2017-18 LeBron to me was the maybe the best combination of his pure on-court abilities and his IQ, all coalescing to he was already kind of a wise old man while still pretty much in his athletic peak, and it was this convergence that we may never see again. And I think Game 1 of the 2018 finals, honestly, even not even to joke about it, but probably that second round series against the Raptors, like that, those few weeks, probably the best LeBron has ever played for like 3 weeks at a time. And that's saying something because he's at worst the second best player of all time. But having said that, if we're just talking about when I think his best season was, which was I think the question LeBron was answering at the time, I'm going all the way back to 2012-13, which was his third season in Miami. It was their second championship year. It's the year they won, was it 29 straight games? When they were getting really close to breaking that Lakers 33-game streak, whatever it was. And to me, that was LeBron at his athletic peak. And it was at his defensive best. Like, I think one of those years in Miami, you could have argued he should have won Defensive Player of the Year. And by the way, he was a 40% three-point shooter. And I know he also had a 40% three-point shooting year a couple years ago with the Lakers, but we can also admit, as great as he still was, all-NBA caliber, he wasn't peak LeBron anymore. That 2012-13 version of him was like peak LeBron offensively, peak LeBron athletically, 40% three-point shooter on decent volume. His effective, I'm not saying true shooting percentage, effective field goal percentage was 60%. And you could make the argument he was the best defensive player in basketball, if not like the second or third best defensive player in basketball. So 2017-18, memorable for all the wrong reasons for all three of us in Toronto. Most of all, John, sorry. John. But I still think if you're asking me, you have like a whole season LeBron to pick from in his 23 years, I'm going 2012-13. To your point, though, the fact that LeBron saying his best year ever was like 8 seasons ago now, or 7.5 years ago. And then I'm saying, no, I think it was actually 13 seasons ago. And we're still sitting here talking about, he just uncorked a crazy jam over Luke Cornett. He had 20 plus the other night. He
scored 11 straight in the game the other day. So they win.
He's not LeBron like that anymore, but he's still a really good player. He was an all-NBA caliber player the last couple of years, and yet his prime was like more than a decade ago.
There's an argument to be made that you could go back even further. Like that first MVP season, I would say I would put up right up there with these other two. I think he finished second. That was also a second. The season you mentioned, it was second defensive player of the year, second defensive player of the year, and then that first MVP season, he was second defensive player of the year. So which I think was either 07, 08, or 08. It might be 07.
And both those years, he was on the Cavs were. Go look at those Cavs rosters. It's one thing to look at the Cavs roster. You mentioned that he dragged to the finals in 07 when they beat the Pistons. Yeah. Go look at the Cavs rosters that had the best record in the entire league in, I think, 07, 08, 08, 09, or 08, 09. I think they won 60-something games. Yeah. Just go look at that roster.
Yeah, there's a reason he left for Miami after that season.
Unbelievable. John, we promise next time we have you on no more PTSD-inducing.
Yeah, I think probably I won't be on that one.
Yeah. Scott, always appreciate you. For Scott Campsall, for John Bennett, for Zach and Agent in the Control Room, my name is Joseph Casciaro. This has been From the Logo. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.